pro-democracy lawmakers there are blasting a proposed new Chinese national security law that outlaws acts of secession, subversion, and treason in Hong Kong, as well as foreign interference. The move is seen as a major clampdown by China's Communist Party after the pro-democracy protests in that city. A small group of protesters marched toward China's central government office in Hong Kong today.
The work in Hong Kong is over because of the implementation of the National Security Ordinance.
One former pro-democracy lawmaker said, quote, they're trying to ban every organization in Hong Kong who dares to speak out against the Communist Party. Some analysts are saying this would be the end of Hong Kong as we know it. Joining me for some analysis on this is Dean Cheng with the Heritage Foundation. Dean, thank you so much for coming on the show. So please explain to our viewers, why is this law so controversial?
Well, the 1997 Basic Law, the Constitution, if you will, for Hong Kong, said that Hong Kong would be allowed to essentially administer itself for 50 years after reversion, so until 2047. And in fact, there was an expectation that the Hong Kong Legislative Council would pass a rule like this. But now Beijing has essentially intervened directly and said, we're not going to wait. We're going to pass this law here in Beijing, which will apply to you, Hong Kong. Effectively, this is saying Hong Kong is no longer under a one country, two systems approach. It is now fully integrated into China, despite the fact that we are not yet at 2047.
Yeah, and let's talk about that real quickly. Talk about the ramifications. If this law passes, what happens?
Well, in the first place, very clearly, the ability to demonstrate for freedom of expression, all of these sorts of things are going to be very much in jeopardy. Even before this, as soon as the COVID clampdowns began, the Chinese began to also arrest organizers of the various protests that have been ongoing for about the last year, year and a half. This is a follow-on already to a white paper the National People's Congress issued back in 2014, which stated that one country, two systems really means one country over two systems. So what this is going to mean is that freedom of the press, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, freedom of protest, freedom of speech, all of these are going to be very much in jeopardy. It also effectively nullifies the independence of the Hong Kong judicial system, which is another basic part of the 50 years that we're supposed to be abided by.
Yeah. Why do you think China decided to push for this now?
Well, part of it is that the National People's Congress, China's legislature, is meeting, it meets about once a year, is meeting right now. Part of it is that with COVID-19, the world's attention is turned away from Hong Kong. It had been focused there. Part of it is, of course, that you won't have as many protests in Hong Kong because of COVID-19. And finally, we are seeing a general broader cracking down by the Chinese authorities on dissent within China as well as Hong Kong, and what they term wolf warrior diplomats, a much more aggressive, assertive foreign policy stance around the world.
Yeah. Is Taiwan next?
Taiwan has always been in the crosshairs, but Hong Kong in many ways was the canary in the Taiwan coal mine. One country, two systems was applied to Hong Kong. It has always been what the Chinese have also dangled in front of Taiwan. The reality is that China cracking down on Hong Kong means that Taiwan has even less reason to believe Chinese promises of autonomy and non-interference should the two reunify.
Can the United States do anything to stop China's march forward in this area, in this part of the world?
Well, with regards to Hong Kong, there is discussion now about whether or not Hong Kong investments, Hong Kong itself should be treated simply as part of China, which would clamp down a lot on everything from investments to access to technology. Throughout East Asia, the region doesn't want to choose between the United States and China. The irony here is that China more and more is the one that is forcing countries to choose. But we need a robust defense, we need strong economic ties to the region, and we need to maintain our alliances, of which we have several key ones with major partners throughout East Asia.
Okay, terrific. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for coming on the show for this very important foreign policy issue happening in this part of the world.